As you watch this, you're going to learn about other evidence and police procedures related to the case so you can have a better understanding of what occurred based on what we know right now. The Albuquerque Police Department conducts very thorough criminal and use of force investigations, which typically require investigators to interview multiple witnesses, review hours of video, and analyze a significant amount of forensic evidence. We're still at the early stages of this investigation, which can often take several months to complete. Our understanding of the incident may change as this additional evidence is collected, analyzed, and reviewed. We also do not draw any conclusions about whether the officers acted consistent with our policies and the law until the facts are known and the investigation is complete. A word of caution, the images and video may be disturbing. When police officers use force to arrest a subject or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. In addition, there may be strong language by those shown in the video. We good? Do you want me to?
Can you just try and see if your HDMI, if you can see if it's in all the way?
Sorry guys, we're gonna make sure this video isn't flickering for you. Let me just come out of it real quick and go back in. We'll see what it does.
I'll just hold it.
What a job. The sergeant involved in this shooting was Sergeant Harold Sinnott. He's been with the Albuquerque Police Department since 2007. He has no prior officer-involved shootings. At the time of this incident, he was assigned to the Valley Area Command. Currently, as of today, he is back on duty in the Valley Area Command. The person who was shot and killed that day was 21-year-old Melina Jones. As I go through this, I want you to understand this is still an open homicide investigation, so we're a little bit still holding some of this information for the homicide investigation, but this is the person who was killed that day. The person that our officer fired a shot at is an unknown male who our homicide investigation is still trying to identify at this point. It took place in our Valley Area Command, specifically in our downtown area. Police were called to a parking lot late at night near 2nd and Central Southwest. The reports that there was a fight and an altercation in progress. As they arrived on scene, Sergeant Sinnott, who got there first, observed a male with a gun shooting someone else, who was Melina. Sergeant Sinnott quickly got out of his marked patrol unit, which had its emergency equipment engaged, and fired one round at the suspect to stop any further shooting. This appeared to work as the suspect, who we don't believe was hit, quickly ran away and the violent incident stopped. And I'm going to stop for a second because we just lost our screen. It's totally black. There, it's back. It's on, it's just flickering every now and then. Now it's off.
Thanks for joining us here on KRQE.com. I'm Chris McKee here in the News 13 Digital Studio. I'm just briefly interrupting here as it looks like APD is having some technical problems in this presentation. Right now that they are discussing, the shooting that they are discussing is this one that happened on August 22nd. You see just a little bit of information down there below. This was downtown in a parking lot. A man is suspected, or was witnessed rather, to have shot and killed a woman named Melina Jones. You just saw her you just saw her photo up there. The suspect in this case has not been identified and is an unknown male at this point. It appears that APD is working to try to show some video related to this case. We do have some of the video here, and we'll bring you back to the live picture as things get started here, but this is also video of a August 28th shooting here that you're seeing marked on screen. That is the second case that APD is expected to discuss here momentarily. Looks like APD says it is taking just a brief break while they try to figure out the tech issue. It looks like there was a flickering image on screen, but as I had mentioned, some of the video here of this actual situation, you can see if we cue that up here on our screen here real quick. August 22nd, this happened downtown This was an early Monday morning, and essentially what occurred was an officer, Sergeant Harold Sennett, is driving by this scene, and as he drives by this scene, he sees a man shooting a woman. Again, that woman is said to have been Melina Jones, the victim in this case. The man who was suspected of shooting and killing Miss Jones has not been identified and has not been arrested. So we are hearing APD talk a little bit more about how that happened. The officer involved in that case ended up firing at the suspect after witnessing this killing. Once that occurred, as Kyle Hartsock was just describing, as they are, again, still live looking here, taking care of these technical issues, once that occurred, what Deputy Commander Kyle Hartsock of APD's Criminal Investigations Division was saying is that essentially that stopped the situation from occurring or anything further happening. We've not gotten to the point here where APD has begun
Justin, we haven't
sharing
tested the
video,
audio
but
on this yet, so I might have to stop it again if we're having audio issues.
appears things are resuming.
So again, as the officers arrived on scene in their marked patrol units with lights on, Sergeant Sennett stated he observed a male with a gun shooting someone else. He got out of his marked patrol unit, which had its emergency lights on, fired one round at the suspect to stop any further shooting. This appeared to work, as the suspect, who we don't believe was hit, quickly ran away and the violent incident stopped. This is surveillance video from the parking lot that captures part of this incident. The altercation takes place in the upper left corner near the white SUV that you see. There was no audio on this video. This is video from Sergeant Sennett's lapel camera. It's important to note that the way the systems are set up, that once the camera is activated, it will capture the prior 30 seconds of video, but no audio. In this case, the shooting happens approximately 3 seconds before Sergeant Sennett activated his camera, so we don't actually have audio of the shooting, but you will see it on video, and I'll tell you it happens quickly, and we'll show you a still shot after of what it captures. But again, here's Sergeant Sennett's lapel video. This is a still shot that comes from the video we just played, showing Sergeant Sennett's firearm firing through the open door of his marked patrol unit. This crime scene photo shows the perspective Sergeant Sennett had as he fired towards the suspect. And again, this is an open homicide investigation. What we also want to put out there is anyone in the public that might have information to assist our investigation to please call 843-STOP, which is Crime Stoppers, or visit crimestoppersnm.com. Over the next several months, the Albuquerque Police Department will continue to investigate and analyze this incident. We will continue interviewing any new witnesses that come forward and complete any forensic test. After the investigation is complete, our Force Review Board will forward the findings to the Superintendent of Police Reform to determine if this incident met the high standards of the Albuquerque Police Department. The MATF will forward their case to the district attorney's office, who will make any determination of criminal charges. And that's the end of this investigation. We'll probably do questions at the end on both.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll let Chief speak as I get set up on this next one.
You know, we're gonna move on to our next officer-involved shooting, which occurred at 2721 Coors Northwest. And I know there's been a lot of questions on this shooting. I just want to remind the public that many times we have been able to release video as quickly as possible, and we do have an investigation that takes precedence. And I know there's been questions reference the release of the video and information. And in this case, you're going to see where there's a lot of great things that occurred. Particular officers who come across a situation, instead of trying to force an arrest, try to work with an individual and try to get the individual home safely, because it is a borderline DWI arrest case. And we're also going to see where officers could have communicated better. And in the end, we're going to see a tragic incident to the end of an individual's life, where once again, we're seeing a common theme, whether it's this previous incident or it's other parties that we've looked at across the city where individuals have lost their life. It's that mixture of firearms and alcohol. And when you have a firearm, you have to be responsible and you have to not put yourself in these positions. And like I said, we've seen it time and time again as a community, and we're just going to ask the community once again, you know, we have to work, we have to set expectations, and whether you're at a party or you're at some other type of event, or you're going out and you feel that you may be drinking, that you leave your firearms at home, because like I said, we've seen the whole gamut of this during the whole course of the past year in our community, where the mixture of firearms and alcohol lead to tragic results for the community. And this is going to be another one of those tragic endings. And like I said, you know, there are things that were done well here, and there are things that I think we could do better as a department and as an agency. And I'll turn it over to Kyle, and we'll make some closing remarks at the end.
And just for brevity, I'm not going to say all the same explainers on how we do investigations. We'll just kind of go into this one. This critical incident community briefing will provide you with information of a person who was shot and killed inside their vehicle during an encounter with police. You're going to see and hear a 911 call and on-body camera footage, so you have a better understanding of what occurred. And again, the images and audio you see might be disturbing. The 3 officers involved in this shooting are Officer Flores, Officer Ketchum, and Officer Skeens. Officer Flores and Officer Ketchum both started with our department in March of 2021, and neither have any prior officer-involved shootings. Officer Skeens has been with the Albuquerque Police Department since 2018 and does not have any prior officer-involved shootings. The person who was shot and killed was 27-year-old Keshawn Thomas, a lifelong resident of Albuquerque. The incident we're here to talk about today took place in the Northwest Area Command. Police were called to 2721 Coors Northwest, gas station located just north of I-40 on Coors Boulevard. An employee at the gas station alerted us that at least one occupant of a green coupe vehicle had been parked at a gas pump for about 4 hours, and they wanted us to check on the welfare of that person. The investigation would later reveal the car drove up about 8:41 p.m. Here was part of that 911 call now.
Albuquerque Police Department, this is operator 7569. How can I help you?
Hi, yes, I work at the Bolero on Coors and I-40, and I got here like a little before 9, and there was like this green Camaro sitting there. He's been sitting there for a while. One of my coworkers, when he left just recently, looked in the car. He said it looks like somebody's in there. For me to call you guys, because he's been there for quite a while, and his car's like not running or anything. He's just been kind of like just sitting there. So I don't know if he's okay, or, but I would say he's been there for like 4.5 hours now.
4.5 hours, okay.
Yeah, and he's just literally like at a pump, and he's just been sitting there.
When officers Flores and Ketchum, who arrived on scene first, they did find the green car and what appeared to be a single driver occupant that appeared to be sleeping. They noted a possible open container of alcohol in the center console. Since the car was not on, they determined they could not conduct a DWI investigation, but would wake the driver and have him or her call a ride home. After they contacted the driver, who was Keshawn Thomas, he exits the vehicle, and a dialogue between Thomas and the officers began. In later interviews, the officer stated that Thomas showed signs of intoxication during this encounter and also admitted to being drunk. During this approximate 10-minute interaction, officers do tell Thomas that he is detained while they investigate, but ultimately make the decision to release him and to call for a ride and for someone to pick up his car so it's not towed. Thomas indicates his phone is in his car and asks permission to retrieve it, which the officers agreed to. Thomas stands up and they ask him if he has any weapons. He reaches into his pocket and pulls out a loaded magazine from a handgun and hands it to Officer Flores. He then indicates that he has a gun in the trunk of his car. The officers indicate they'll return the magazine to him when they leave and ask him to get his phone. Thomas enters the driver's seat of the car and appears to begin to search the center console area. He turns towards the officers and says something that can't be heard on video, but places his hands halfway in the air as he says it. The officers tell him to retrieve his phone and come back out of the car. Officer Flores at this point stepped closer to watch the inside of the car and stated he saw in his interviews later on a gun in the right hand of Thomas. On the video, you'll see Officer Flores yells, "Gun, gun, gun," and stated that Thomas started to tilt the gun towards him when he made the decision to fire. Both additional officers on scene also draw their weapons after Flores and also fire into the car. All three officers in their post-interview would state that they saw a gun in Thomas's hand. We're now going to show you a few different angles of this shooting. Here is the video from Officer Flores' camera. We did edit to save time for this presentation.
What's going on, man? You okay? Good. Just stand up, get out. You're not in trouble. Just stand up and get out. Just obviously for me. You gotta find somebody to come get you, or you gotta walk away? Well, I'm gonna call somebody. Okay, what's your phone? Yeah, I do have my phone. Okay, can you call somebody? Can I walk to my car? Yeah, is that okay? This is not me. You don't have weapons, right? No, I don't. I do have a weapon in my trunk. A pocket there? Oh. Alright, cool. I'll give it back. No worries. Oh, I don't need you. Still got our office.
This view shows you all three officers' cameras synced up. The audio is only coming from one camera.
Can I walk to my car? Yeah, is that okay? This is not me. Go for it. Yeah, I'll walk it, right? I do have one thing in my car. shots fired, shots fired, she's there. Any 613 feet, here's the center.
Officer Skeen's lapel camera had the best view of inside the car when the car when the shooting occurred. Here is just his camera. There's a zoomed in version of that video we just showed you, just at the end, and there's no audio. After the shooting takes place, Officer Skeens approaches the car and removes a gun from the driver's side floorboard. Here's a perspective of another officer filming the gun being retrieved. This is a photograph taken by our crime scene team of the firearm taken from the floorboard of Thomas's car. It did have one round in the chamber and no magazine. A magazine that appears to fit Thomas's handgun was found on the driver's seat. A cell phone was not found in the car or on his person. Keshawn Thomas suffered gunshot wounds and was transported to the hospital, where he later died. The investigation so far reveals that Officer Flores fired 7 rounds, Ketchum 4, and Skeens 5. And again, as I said earlier, over the next several months, our department will continue to investigate and analyze this incident. We'll continue to interview any new witnesses that come forward and complete any forensic test. Once investigation is complete, our Force Review Board will forward the findings to the Superintendent of Police Reform to determine if this incident met the high standards of our department. And the MATF will work with the special prosecutor at the DA's office, who independently will make any determination of criminal charges. And at that point, I'll open it up to questions. Or actually, Chief wants to make a couple comments first.
You know, I just wanted to comment, because like I said, I know this shooting in particular has gotten some attention, and I know that the ACLU publicly made some statements about this shooting, and I wanted to address that, you know, I think it's irresponsible for us this time to jump to conclusions. We hadn't even released video, and I read statements reference some of the stuff that had been said. The ACLU is well aware of the fact that we release video on every officer involved shooting, with the exception of one for other reasons, that it was involved the federal investigation since I've been chief of police. They know that we have to conduct a investigation, and that when we're able to, we've been fully transparent to release video. Claim without knowing facts that this was an unnecessary and preventable death. Prior to this incident, I think it's very difficult for somebody to make any statements towards it. And this is especially concerning for me because the ACLU is part of the Miki groups. They are part of the groups that are part of the DOJ settlement agreement. And I think that we have to come to an understanding where we have stronger communication. We work with one another. I've always been open. I actually called them yesterday, left a message, still didn't get a return phone call that I had updated information for them on this case. The claim that the death of Keshawn Thomas is further proof that the current use of force laws have completely failed to protect our community, especially people of color. My disappointment in the ACLU is this, is they are a voice for the communities of color. They are a voice for the communities that have had strained relationships with law enforcement historically. We've created an ambassador program to help us bridge that gap. And these statements such as these that drive a wedge between the Albuquerque Police Department and communities that have never had strong relationships with the police department are extremely unprofessional, uncalled for, and irresponsible. We are working hard as a police department to increase our communication and are working with these with different communities within the community. And we take steps back with some of these community groups in building trust when misinformation is presented. And I hope that in the future, any advocacy group reaches out to the Albuquerque Police Department. We do know that we had family members who reached out. Our commander of investigations did reach out and leave messages, didn't get phone calls back. The Albuquerque Police Department is doing everything it can to be transparent, and I hope that all the entities involved in helping individuals bridge that gap and increase their relationships with the Albuquerque Police Department take a look at themselves and ensure that they're doing what is right for the community and to help build relationships, because there's two things that are certain. Different community groups aren't going anywhere, but the Albuquerque Police Department will always continue to police the streets of Albuquerque. And this is about building strong relationships and continuing to communicate with all aspects of the community. Thank you.
Chief, I have a question.
Yes.
You said at the beginning that there were some things that could have been done better by the officers. What were you referring to?
Communication. I think that it's key, and as you go through the entirety of this video, you'll see at one point in time, and I as a police officer, I was there. I did 14 years on the street, and I know at times dealing with intoxicated individuals that it becomes difficult and you get frustrated. I think that, to me, there is a sense of frustration at certain points at time during the entirety of the video, and you'll see. And I think that we could be better at controlling our frustrations and the way we communicate with individuals, and that's an expectation that we will push down to our officers. But for me, it came down to communication and ensuring that we did the best communication possible with members of the community.
Are you referring to the communication surrounding the issue of the gun?
I'm talking about the communications, and as you see the video in its entirety, you'll see there are times that that it seems like the officers are becoming frustrated and they may have cussed at a few points in time. So it's to that extreme that we're looking at this situation and saying that we could be better as a department.
Do you see anything that could have been done better during the actual shooting?
I think that we have to let this take its course through the Force Review Board. They have to analyze the whole situation. There are things that 5-10 years ago as a patrol officer, I would never allow an individual to go into a car. But in today's day and age, where so many times our officers are questioned, did you have lawful authority? Was there a reason for you to search this individual's car? Times have changed, and I think that as a police department, we really need to look into evaluate these situations to see, are our officers fearful of doing certain activities because of the fact that it could lead to further liability or complaints. And this goes to this whole reform process and how officers have spoken about the fact that many times they're concerned and they feel that their actions are really looked at, and that there's that sense of we're going to get in trouble for doing our job. So like I said, years ago, I think most officers wouldn't allow somebody to go into their vehicle, but with everything that has happened over the previous few years, the fact that, you know, we are questioning officers. What was your lawful authority? Were you able to enter a car? It puts that level of doubt into an officer's mind whether they could do this or not. So that was part of their concerns, is my understanding, is that whether they had the lawful authority to go back into the vehicle or not.
For the suspect in that case, was there any indication why he might have felt like he was being threatened? Did he have any kind of prior criminal record?
Not that we could find, and I think this is just one of those unfortunate incidents, and that's why I opened it the way that I opened it. I think it's important that we recognize when people are under the influence of alcohol, they're not the same person. Every single one of us has family members or friends that we've dealt with while they're intoxicated. And, you know, alcohol changes people's personalities and has them do things that they normally wouldn't do. And to me, this is a tragic ending to a young man's life that didn't need to occur. But the fact when you have that combination, once again, of alcohol, firearms, there is no good that's going to come out of it. And we got to change the norm of our community, and we got to change what's going on in Albuquerque in terms of so many people going out armed, and time again we're seeing these violent confrontations or these situations escalate when you have an individual who's under the influence of alcohol and in possession of a firearm.
And I apologize if this is already addressed, but the 3 officers in this case, are they back on duty?
I don't know.
They're not back on duty as of right now.
They're not back on duty right now.
Is that their choice, or is that something that?
I don't have all the details. We could look into that, but it's typical that sometimes it goes beyond regular timeframes. And I know we've always said 3 days standard leave, but in reality, in today's day and age, sometimes it's a week, sometimes it's 2 weeks. It just depends on their process through the behavioral sciences division and how they feel they are mindset-wise ready to go back to work.
Are they going to come back to work, or are they done with the department? Like, do you have any?
No, we have no indication that they're done with the department. It's just administration. Yes, I think that's the best way to phrase it is they haven't been released to come back by behavioral sciences, and it's not a matter that anybody has any concerns or there's other things that are concerning to us at this point in time.
Wait, I'm sorry. Maybe this is getting too confusing, but they have not been released to come back?
They haven't been released to come back from work. The way the process works is they work with our behavioral sciences division, and generally after meeting with the officers, talking to them, checking their mental health, they will make a determination when they're ready to come back, and we haven't gotten information yet that they're returning to work.
We expect them to be back on duty soon, though, as soon as later on this week or early next week, but that could change.
They'll be back on Friday.
They'll be back on Friday. There's your answer. See, he knew the answer in the back, and he was held out and made us all sweat.
He mentioned that there was a gun in the trunk. Was that recovered, and was anything else found in the car?
As I understand, there was actually no gun in the trunk. The officers did remove it, from I understand, from the seat of the car and placed it on top of the trunk. And I don't know if that's what led to some of the confusion with the misinformation that had been floating around in the past few weeks. But there was no firearm that was recovered in the trunk.
Was the gun he had registered?
You know, we don't have a true registration system. They'll be doing a check to see the origin of the firearm, who it was purchased originally by, and they'll be able to look up that information. But the last update I got didn't have that information yet, but we will be researching that.
We usually see them kind of rush in and start medical, like, life-saving measures. When did they do that? Did they do that in this case?
You know, that's something they'll have to go through Force Review Board to see if they reacted quickly enough and what measures they did provide. It is part of our policy, and that is one of the things that we'll be looking at. And that is one of those other things, as you talk about, that I think we could do better, is that's one of the things that we looked at.
In the first case, in the first lapel we saw,
Yes.
is there any other things that you guys are looking for in the suspect? I mean, there's a lot of cameras in downtown, any cars, anything specific?
You know, I'd have to get an investigative update. Do we have a warrant on that case yet?
For the public, we're asking if they know if they have information, go ahead and submit it on Crime Stoppers, but it's an active investigation, so we can't share too much more without sharing everything.
Yeah, if you have any information on the first case on the homicide, please call Crime Stoppers. Any other
It's kind
questions?
of hard to see with the 2 videos. So that photo that you showed afterwards of him pointing the gun, that was the shot that you said happened right before?
It's in the video, but it's really quick because the camera's kind of pointing up through the car. So we gave you the still shot, but when you see the video, when you guys get it, it's about 3 seconds before the audio comes in. You just have to know what you're looking for in the video to really see it. It's very quick.
Was he aiming at anyone? Like, was he aiming at the suspect?
He was, and where his car was positioned, he's positioned right in front of where the homicide is taking place.
Okay.
And as he gets out of the car, you can see he comes around the front of his vehicle, and you can hear the people yelling about the victim. He aimed right directly in that same direction.
And he said after that's what kind of the crowd started kind of coming in on it, that's why he got shoot in.
Yeah.
I have heard some concerns from people about the amount of time it took the ambulance to get there. Do you know how long it took the ambulance
I don't, but I will tell you historically, like being an officer and taking these calls, it always seems like it's a long period of time. And what may be minutes to some people on scene, what may actually be minutes to people on scene is actually sometimes feels like an eternity. So it is normal that it seems like it takes rescue or ambulances a long time to get there. And you have to remember, they're not just driving around and maybe around the corner as officers are. Sometimes they're being dispatched from further locations.
I think when you watch the full video, you'll see when they come, but you'll also see officers providing aid as well to homicide victims.
Any last comments to fights escalating out of control, involving alcohol, involving firearms?
You know, and I want to reiterate this. You know, we are seeing a record number of homicides in Albuquerque. Let's not hide behind the numbers. I mean, the fact is we've seen a record number, and each year it keeps growing. And one thing that I could tell you is consistent is firearms and individuals making poor decisions. And every time you have a firearm in the hand of an individual who is under the influence of alcohol, the possibility of them making poor, life-changing decisions is there, and we see it. We see young men and women at this point losing their lives, and we also see others that are going to be incarcerated for vast majority of their life at this point in time. So we have to change what is norm in Albuquerque, and I think that's where all of us, you know, we whether as parents or as friends, you know, when we do have those individuals around us who are armed with firearms, we have to set those expectations that, you know, when we're drinking or we're using drugs, that, you know, that's not the time for somebody to be in possession of a firearm, because it's the only way we're going to start reeling back some of these homicides that are occurring and shootings, is that we take firearms out of the hands of individuals at risky times, and that's when they're under the influence.
One last thing for the second shooting. Are there any concerns about the officers firing in the direction of gas pumps at this gas station?
All that will go through Force Review Board. They'll look at it. They'll make recommendations on tactics. You know, I honestly had never thought about that, but actually that's a pretty good point. And sure, all of Force Review Board here is hearing it now and they'll think. But, you know, a lot of times it comes down to officers making split-second decisions, and to try to filter all those questions through their mind sometimes is an unreal expectation. So it is something we'll note, but I don't know of any concerns right now.
Thank you,
All right,
everybody.
thanks.